Okay, so we are back one step away from with a new host for today, K. Last time was M. It'll be changing upon every time we do different podcasts. So be welcome to a new voice. So for today, what subjects are we going to hit on? Today we're going to be focusing on role models. Now you might be asking, what is a role model? Or you might be thinking, I have role models. Or who are they? Or I didn't have any. Well, we'll be just discussing different aspects of that for today from each of our different perspectives, and hopefully giving you an insight into what we see our role models as and how we should be role models for the future generations. So in starting, I would like to introduce the first question. It is, what is a role model? What is a role model? Let's define that first. So just throwing that out there, anyone jump in. What do you feel a role model is?
On the surface, someone that you look up to.
On the surface, someone that you look up to. Okay. Any other takers?
Someone you admire.
Right.
Someone to pave the way for yourself and your future, or what you deem your future to be. So we live in a world where normally we follow cycles. So hopefully someone that can pave the way to continue a positive cycle.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is all positive stuff. And what I'm hearing is almost desire of hope. You see some degree of hope or wanting in that person where you wish to follow in their footsteps, someone you admire, someone that has a better standing than you. Would it be correct for me to say that a role model has to have an attribute where someone is in a better position than you are?
Not necessarily.
I would say yes for myself. That's how I've always viewed role models, is someone who is in a better footing than I am, and someone who I would like to follow in their footsteps from a young age.
I agree.
Same. Cool. So I'd just like to throw this definition out there. We've just got some brief definition in terms of what we feel it is. So I'm just going to get one from the Cambridge Dictionary. So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a role model is a person who someone admires and whose behavior they try to copy. Very similar to what you lot were saying, yeah? There's some admiration, yeah, which means that you see something in them that you are just in awe with. And also you try to copy their behavior. Why? Because you want to get to their outcome. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Cool. Also state, according to the KN Consulting website, there's apparently 7 traits that are attributed to a role model. Now, the first one is to demonstrate confidence and leadership. So someone who's in charge and someone who is sure about themselves. 2 is not to be afraid to be unique. Now, that is a serious one. Mm. How does that resonate with you, the second one, not being afraid to be unique?
That makes sense. It's about being confident in your own ability and in your own skin, I suppose.
Yeah, that one's about levels, if I'm being honest. That one differentiates. Like, you can have role models like generically, but when you've got someone that's not afraid, whether it's taking risks or taking extra responsibilities or kind of just thinking outside of the box,
going against the grain.
Yeah, that statement right there, like, exactly, going against the grain. Even when everything's going one way, you choose to go the other way because you know within your heart that way. So you can see 100 people walking one way, one path. There's only one person walking that path. That shows you level. So not afraid to just do something different, or not afraid to kind of make a commitment that is not popular. That tells me levels and courage and everything. I love that.
I guess for myself, not being afraid to be unique was an attribute I achieved later in life. I think earlier in life I was afraid to be unique, and I think it was my uniqueness that caused a lot of problems for whatsoever reason. However, as my confidence grew, as the first point states, I became my own leader. Now, what I mean by that is I weren't interested in people following me, because as a leader, I only looked forward. I wasn't interested looking back. So if people chose to walk by my side or chose to follow me, then that's their choice. But either way, I'm still looking forward because I'm leading my own self, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that grew the more I became comfortable with my uniqueness, the more I became comfortable with not having to try to be part of the crowd, try to fit in, which has always been one of my earlier struggles, me trying to fit in, me questioning why I'm not X, Y, and Z, and why I'm not this, that. And I got to a point where I was comfortable with me being me. And that's something very hard. And a lot of people don't ever get to that stage of being comfortable about themselves, because it's either shut down or because you receive negative consequences because you want to be unique. So therefore you learn by way of behavior, by way of consequences, not to be who you are, if that makes sense. And I feel that really hits home when it comes to being not only my own personal characteristics, which are just unique to myself, but also my characteristics that I can't change and that I don't want to change, which is being a black man.
Yeah, I agree with that. It also is a way of influence as well, because with today's world, we've got social media who's telling people how to be, how to dress and everything else. So that can also affect your confidence and you trying to be your own unique self because everyone else is doing the same thing. So influence plays a massive part, especially when you're growing up.
Very much so. So that's point 1 and 2. So now moving on to point 3 and 4. Point 3 says to communicate and interact with everyone. And point 4 says show respect and concern for others. These are the other 2 traits that is apparently attributed to role models. So that is communicate and interact with everyone and show respect and concern for others. What's your opinion on them 2? Is it required? Is it necessary?
I think to be a good role model or a good leader, I would say more of a good leader than more of a good role model. I think those attributes, to me, I would akin those attributes more to a good leader, more so than a good role model.
Rather than a good role model. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, because as a good leader, you are aware that you have to communicate with everyone and you have to have that respect in order to gain that respect from other people. Whereas some people that are role models may not necessarily know they're role models. They're just going through living their life doing what they think is right. So they might not necessarily have that thought in their head that they have to do these things because they might not even see themselves as role models.
Right. And I think you hit a key point there, and I made a note of that. You said role models may not know they are role models. I think that is so poignant, because as far as I'm concerned, most of my role models in my life probably don't know that they are my role models because they're not famous, they're not rich, they're not celebrities, they're not all that stuff, but they don't know that they are my role models.
Yeah.
And I strive to be like them or be more, not like them so I am them. I want to keep my uniqueness, trust me. But there's attributes within them that I think, you know what, I need to take that on board. That's a very good trait that I'm seeing in that person, and it's consistent, and it's helpful, it's beneficial for me and those that I am around me. So, and that person might be going about their daily life just like a generic person, not realizing that they are being looked up to by others. So yeah, I fully agree with that statement there.
See, with those 2 points, with those out of the 4 that you've mentioned already, those 2 points are the weakest 2 for me. If I was to consider, and I won't kind of divulge too much, but if I was to consider myself as a role model, I believe that they're good traits to have, generically speaking, but I believe that also you can function without having to be able to communicate with everyone, because that can be one of the traits where you become a good role model, where you have the ability, because of your uniqueness, you have the ability not to need to communicate with everyone, and also what was this? What was the fourth one? I think you remember. You think you said show
It
respect
was
and
show
concerns for
respect
others.
and concern. Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes people don't deserve respect if they haven't earned it. So once again, that's a trait of a role model to understand. You know what? If someone's disrespecting you and they're continuously doing it, and there's no kind of middle ground to kind of resolve that, then you may need to kind of just allow it. You may need to kind of just move on and go. You know what? Whatever you do, you I do me. But by how you carry yourself, I don't respect you. And if I'm kind of teaching that to, for example, my children, as long as there's a baseline to understand why you're taking that decision, I think that can be a role model. That stance can still be a positive role model to someone else. So as much as, yes, they are good attributes, I think there are ways where you can deviate from them and still maintain your core values and still be a good person.
Okay. I almost, I do agree with you. It's not even almost. I agree. I think they are very weak when it comes to what a role model means to me and what a role model has been for me. So based on experience, not just my thoughts. I don't believe you have to be an outgoing, talkative, social person who shows concern and respect for everyone. It must be earned. It must be deserved. If not, I believe you become a fool. And I believe people will see that in you as a weakness. If you are going to go out there and show everyone respect and concern and want to talk to everyone, regardless of what they do to you or to your people, then I believe that sets you up to be a fool and sets you up to be walked over. And unfortunately, there's people out there that do that on a daily basis. So I do believe that they are two of the weakest traits in regards to what I see a role model as. So yes, I actually hear what you say there, Em. And I also agree with you too. Is there anything else people want to say on these two? Because I'm going to move on to 5 and 6. Cool.
No, I think you've got it covered.
So
Definitely.
5 and 6, it says, be knowledgeable and well-rounded. Number 6 says, have humility and willingness to admit mistakes. So once again, part 5 is be knowledgeable and well-rounded. Part 6 is be humble and have the willingness to admit mistakes. Throwing that out there.
So, okay, you said you got this from Cayenne Consultancy, yeah?
Yeah, indeed. This is a consulting agency which believe these are the attributes that are needed within a role model.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. So, starting from number 1 to now at number 6, this to me looks like it's a work role model. It's not a role model just in general. They've done this as, okay, you're in workplace. This is what a role model should be at work. Because if you really want to look at it from number 1, demonstrate confidence and leadership, that's work related. Don't be afraid to be unique. Again, work related. Communicate and interact with everyone. Again, work related. Yeah. Show respect and concern for others. Same thing. Be knowledgeable and well-rounded. That's another thing. Have humility and willingness to admit mistakes. So to me, it seems like they are looking at it from just work around work. That's it. Which, if you want to look at it like that, then yeah, these are the attributes and the traits that you need in a work environment. But
I think
as
they
a
can
role
still be
model,
used. Sorry, carry on.
yeah, as a role model in general, yeah, some of them can be used. So I agree with you, man. But looking at as overall, the list from number 1 to number 6 now, it just looks to me like it was geared towards people in workplaces.
Could you apply those? So 1 to 6, could you apply those to a community leader or a religious leader?
I believe you could.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
But as a role model, like we were saying, someone like you said about show respect and concern for others, we know really that's not going to be always visible. Like you said, someone could be very disrespectful to yourself. You're not always going to be saying, "Oh, right, I still need to show you respect and concern." It's not going to work like that. I'll be like, well.
So T, now I will expose the sourcing. You kind of picked at it and kind of picked at it a little bit with point 3 and 4. This is a work-based one. I've done it on purpose. And as you can see, we have a differentiation to what is expected within the workplace.
Yeah.
You weren't supposed to expose that, but
okay.
Yeah, levels.
My bad.
That's what it is, isn't it? You know what I mean?
My bad.
but I developed this and I researched this because this is what is expected of us within a workplace in general. Yeah.
Mm.
We've already bounced back against the grain already. We've already questioned.
And you normally find role model be part of, like, especially in the environment that I've worked in the past. That's one of the objectives that you'll be given, is to be a role model for the company.
Thank you very much. Now,
Yeah.
that is the ultimate point I was going to make, but I don't need to make it now. Yeah. These are expectancies in terms of how we should shape ourselves. Yeah.
Mm.
And this will blend very nicely when we start to talk about our role models and see how much they differentiate or might be similar with what is expected within a work environment. I will say part 7, just for the listeners out there, part 7 was do good things outside the job. So that kind of that summarized the whole direction.
Which says it all, really, innit?
Yeah, it summarized the whole direction. But my group of boys here are on so much levels, they were able to expose my sourcing before I could even expose it myself. That's what I expect from my boys. So levels to that still. But we're not going to talk about part 7. Part 7 is about do good things outside the job, which would have told you in essence where this sourcing was coming from. So yes, we've been through what now we have described a role model as. We've been through the Cambridge Dictionary definition of what a role model is. We've been through a work in our environment, attributes of what a role model should be or how you should be to be a good role model. And we also discussed that in terms of our differentiation with the work model. Yeah. So that will be a good time to stop here. And we're going to come back with part 2, which will be about our personal role models and how that has impacted us. Okay, so we're back, part 2. Done away with that step A to Z methodology of talking about role model. Let's talk about our own experiences now. Our own role models, how they've impacted us, whether they've known that they are our role models or not. And we're going to discuss how do we become role models? How has our role models changed? And if they've changed. So let's jump off the unbat. Whoever wants to start first, jump in with who your role model is, how it's impacted you with your life.
I have a feeling that most of us are gonna have not the same role models, but our role models take up the same position in our lives. So me being an only child, grew up with a single mother. My role model throughout my life has that's one of them that's been consistent has been my mother. Because I saw from a young age her work extremely hard to maintain the lifestyle that she likes and also to look after me. I've seen her do it in 2 countries. And being in the UK, I've seen her work 10 times harder than I saw her working in the Caribbean. I've seen her put up with a lot more over here. I've seen her do a lot more to make sure that I was okay and she was okay. Her determination, her intelligence. She put herself through university. Got a master's in the end. Yeah, she got more than 1 degree. So you get me. Her intelligence, her determination, her work ethic. Her funnily enough, her discipline. I said if it wasn't for her, I probably would have been a completely different individual today. I wouldn't be the person that people say, oh, Jay's so polite, he's so friendly, he's so well-spoken, well-mannered, when I want to be.
Who said that?
So, well, that's what I said, when I want to be, and when it calls for it, I can be that person. So I think that, and that's attributed to her and how she raised me. So for me, yeah, growing up from a young age, I didn't have, looking in hindsight, I didn't have much role models. I wasn't a big sports fan, so I didn't have like any sports role models. Loved music, but not really anyone that I could say really truly influenced me to the point where it truly affected my life. But other than my mother, that's the only person I can say at this moment.
And I would say that she became your role model by default, based on the behavior and actions
for
that
sure.
she took.
For sure.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And that's powerful. And as you say, that's quite a similar story. Fortunately or unfortunately is another question, but for quite a lot of people with our cultural background, and we have to understand that you're a man, yeah, but your number one role model was a female, or is a female, should I say? She still is your role model. That's an interesting take on that circumstance. But we'll delve into that a little bit deeper. T, can you jump in and let us know what your role model is, and etc., and go on from there, mate?
Yeah, so for me, it's I find my role models have changed over the years. It's just not been one person, depending on where I was at in life. So as a young boy, I remember one of my uncles was, you know, in the army, he had everything going, the women, the music, the alcohol, and I was fascinated by it. So to me,
So
I
how old were
remember
you?
I was young. You're talking about probably 5, 6.
Okay.
So looking at that, I was interested in that. I'm like, that's who I want to be when I want to be like you. You know how it is as boys. So as I've then grown to the next stage now, I'm in secondary school and I'm looking around today's history and I'm like, right, Nelson Mandela is my role model, right? And I remember when people asked to be like, yeah, Mandela stood for something. So that was a different stage of my life again. And then after now I got older and I was observing people around me, then I realized actually I'm a bit unorthodox when it comes to role models. I don't just have one. Now I have 2. So how I go about it is depending on what I'm looking at in my life, I've got a different role model for that. So I've got 2. I've got my dad and my mum.
Right.
Even though they're not together, but to me, I look at them and can use them as my role models. So for example, I had to look at them individually and say, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Because we all have strengths and weaknesses as humans. So I would say on this subject, that's my dad's strengths. So he's my role model when I'm looking at this particular situation. Now, on my mum's side, that's her strength. So I'm looking at this situation. She's my role model for that. So I try to merge both of them as my role models, but on different situations. But
Right.
that's
So you're
because
almost switching between one to the next, depending on what circumstance you come up with. You're
Relate to
looking
them
ex-
to.
still.
Okay.
exactly. So it's a bit unorthodox than most people where they will just have one person. But for me, it's changed from when I was a little boy growing up and then obviously realizing what life is all about. And then that would change from my uncle who was irresponsible and all about the party life. When I was younger, that was my idol, that was my role model, to actually then growing up and realizing, actually, no, you need to be responsible in life. We've got bills to pay. And then that shifted again. And then shifted again when myself now, I became a parent. I think most people have that shift when you become a parent and you think, wow, this is what it actually takes. So I look at my parents now and I see them in a different light. So I then look at their strengths and I say, my dad is my role model because his strengths are here and that's what I look up to. My mum, her strengths are here and that's what I look up to.
See.
That's profound.
Yeah, man. Definite, man.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much in terms of taking from different aspects of people. I would say for me, just to put a different twist on it, the role models that I had growing up are not my role models now, and the reason for that is that in a weird way, they've done what they needed to do for me to be who I am now.
100.
And the role models that I have now are, to be fair, everyone in this podcast, so the people in this podcast, but also a few people outside of this podcast, just like T said, depending on what situation that I'm in, I'll be like, okay, I'm going through this parenting situation. What would this guy do about it? Like, how would he? So, depending on my situation, like T said, or if it's a work situation, how's Kay going to deal with it? Like, so I take little bits from everyone, or my support network that I have, which is strong, and I have to emphasize that for the listeners. That's not to put it on a level to anyone else, but I know that my support network's strong. So I take elements of, and because we communicate all the time, and like I said, a few people outside of this podcast as well that I communicate with regularly. It's just one of those things where you take aspects of the strength that you have around you, to be fair. So just to reiterate, the role models that I had before, yes, they'll still be on that pedestal, but they've kind of done what they needed to do, and because I've become a man now, but you still need that support along the way.
They serve their purpose.
Kind of, yeah. Without that sounding kind of degrading, but you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm a little bit rough speaker, so yeah.
No, but that's what I wanted to say. But yeah, for me, that's my support network that I have, and the people that I communicate with daily. Just take aspects from those people. And then depending on the situation, like T said, I'll take aspects from those people.
Cool, nice one, M. I just want to do a little bit of feedback before we jump on to S and R and myself. So what I'm hearing is that sometimes there could be multiple role models that need to be taken up on board because each person or each role model has different attributes that are needed within different circumstances. What I'm also hearing from T as well is that I want to make this very clear to the listeners out there. And this is no disrespect or respect to anyone. This is a gray area straight down the dumb line. Now, I want to say this. T had the opportunity to have his mother and his father to be his role model. Understand that. That's powerful to me from people of my cultural background, to have a mother and a father to be able to be your role model. That's powerful. So yeah, I just want to make note of that. I just don't want people to overlook that, man. Unfortunately, for people in our cultural background, that might not always be possible. And it also is seen as a stereotype as well that's attributed onto us. So to see 6 black men here now, yeah, some of us fathers doing our thing with our children, yeah, because their children is my children too, you know. I understand that, yeah. So I just want to give that there in terms of your role model there, T, then you're able to replicate that as a father with your children now. Yeah.
100%.
All right. Cool. So who's gonna jump in?
Yeah. I'm there. Well, for me, what I have to understand is that, as T and M said, throughout life, people come into your life, people come out of your life for good reason. And that's where I'll start. Like those that have been constant in my life, i.e. my mother, i.e. my father. Now, I fall under that bracket of being brought up in a single parent household in a Western definition. Within my household, my father was still present. He didn't live in my house, but he was still present.
Okay. Levels.
That took me a long time to, how can we say, to comprehend until I became a parent myself. Knowing that you can still be a father, but not be in the home was the biggest lesson I have ever learned. Ever.
100.
Yeah.
Wow.
S. Say that again.
Knowing that you can be a father and not live in the home was the biggest lesson that I have ever learned.
Biggest lesson and biggest blessing.
See it there.
Wow.
See it there. And that for me is my standard for role models. That is my standard now, yeah? And I apply that to most things that I do. I take it back to my mother, same with what Jay said. She, at one point, was doing a mother role, a father role, a friend role, a guidance role, all encompassed under one. Now that, to me, I hold, maybe unfairly, but I hold any woman that I see a future with to those standards. To me, there's no excuse. Yeah.
Listen, that's
Me.
another podcast by
I
itself.
was about to say, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Hold fire.
Reload that gunshot, boy.
Back the shotgun and
Fantastic.
blast.
You can reel it on the edit, see?
Let me have another sip of my drink, boy. It's starting to get real now.
Oh,
That there,
women out there. Okay.
Jesus, but that there, yeah, is my standard, yeah? And it's for me, going on in life, it's for me to accept whether people will meet that standard, or even if they have to meet that standard, yeah? But that's at a later date. But they're my foundations in what I look for in a role model, yeah? There is no excuse. If things have to be done, have to be done. And in the role models that I look up to, especially like my mother, my father, and especially for those of you who have seen him, met him, yeah, and been around him, my grandfather. He set the way. He set the way for my family, this generation over here. He was the first one to leave Barbados and come here, yeah? If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be born. But he sent for my mother when she was 7 years old. I wouldn't be here, Jed, yeah? So he set the way. To me, he's on the throne at the moment, man, until the good Lord is ready for him. So that, in my roundabout way, are my role models.
Respect.
Man,
That was
we
powerful,
hear that.
man.
Very, very
Yeah.
good. Very good
That
indeed.
was powerful, my man.
Really enjoyed that.
You know what I mean? All right, then. Do you want to jump in?
Right. Okay. My role models, well, I had two really. My mother was my first role model, and my older brother was my second role model, really, growing up. You know, and in many ways, I wanted to emulate both parties. I wanted to be like my mum in some ways, strong and endearing, and like my brother. My brother was a successful engineer who'd travel around the world when I was very young. And of course, I wanted to emulate that because he'd had all these different adventures. And I thought, you know, as I got older, you know, you kind of replicate that in a similar type of job. But yeah, they were my role models growing up.
So, in terms of your mother's side, what attributes would you say would be something you would look up to or aspire to, as you earlier said in the first part? Something that you would admire?
Yeah, well, my mother was really, really determined, and I would say that was her main characteristic. She was a really determined lady who was, you know, when she worked, she'd put all her heart into it, but she just had a really strong determination about her, and that's the bit that I take. Really, you know, that's the bit I take from her. You know, really determined.
You know,
So-
one thing I'm picking up. Sorry, Kay. One thing I'm picking up on this as well. We have to pay homage to our mothers, man, our women here, because it's just showing that the tenacity that they've got. My mum was 5'2". Well, she's 5'2", but she would
still lick
speak
you
to
down.
me. Yes, she would say, "Listen, you're not too old to get beats, even up to my age now, where I'm a parent myself." She's like, "Listen, we can still do this. Like, we can go in the back garden and handle this."
Wow.
We can still do this.
Wait a minute. Local
Fantastic.
social services, wait a minute.
We can still do this, you
So-
know. Still throwing
Yeah,
hands.
like, for me, just listening to all you guys, it's the same. It's the same traits of hardworking, not taking a no for an answer. We have to pay homage, man.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting for us, just speaking and in this using this core group of 6 individuals, that for the most part, all our role models were in the home or very close to the home. You would rarely find people, no matter what race, saying, do you get what I'm saying, that they're that close to home. Could be because of their circumstances. Some people might not have the type of parents we had that pushed us to be determined. They might have had parents that would have had maybe social issues or whatever that stopped them from being the role models in their children's lives. So we were lucky in a sense to have those people, especially our mothers for the most part, that was in our lives, in the home, that gave us that guidance, that ultimately led them to them being our role models. And like Kay mentioned earlier, I don't think they actually know that they are our role models. Like if you ask them, they would never guess themselves.
And you hit a very valid point there when you said, just holding this back to one step away from people. We are in terms of the point you made, it's almost as if we're a rarity when it came to the establishment of our homes. And don't get me wrong, all of our homes had problems. Come on now.
Yeah.
Let's just be real here. But in terms of, it's about, and I guess this can flow on into my role models, it's about the ability to be long suffering. And I feel that that is attributed to only a certain people with a certain historic background, because to be long suffering is something we had to be. There's a difference between choosing and having to. There's an element of survival that I have learned from my role models. And I believe that is more than just them as an individual person. I believe that is an ancestral lineage that we've had to have in order to see the next day, the next year, the next month, etc. Yeah.
So, and just before you continue, I think just to make it clear, because I'm sure any listener from any background, race, colour or creed, I'd say majority of people would use their parents as role models. Like, so don't ever think that we're the only ones that will use our mums. But I think what you was alluding to, Kay, is the fact that the reasons why they've become our role models may be slightly different to maybe different people from different cultural backgrounds. And I think as we speak, it'll be more apparent to why I say that and why I feel that. So it's not to say that anyone else, any listeners, any like that, can't use their parents or that's not that. We're not saying that. It's more the fact that, okay, what are the reasons why they are? You know what I mean? And then you'll be able to see the differences.
Cool. Yes, man. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I know I'm a bit of a rough speaker. Yeah, I mean, that's why you have a group of people I am around you that can filter through some of the systems and get it out there. You know what I mean?
What's that corporate environment, man?
You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't worry, man. Yeah. So in terms of my role models, I've got several. I think I reflect quite a lot of the group. I believe it was only Jay who had a singular role model, and rightly so, based on the triumphant and achievements that this person has made, and I can attest to that myself. She's Levels.
100.
Yeah, I mean. So yeah,
I said she's mothered us all at one point.
I actually agree with that. So yes, so with mine is without a doubt my brother, my mother, my father. They're the 3 immediate role models for myself, each for their own different reasons. I've said this to my boys many times as to why, and I'll go through briefly. My father, by the way, my mother and my father both have the attribute of long suffering. Yeah, I won't go into their details. That's their own personal business, but they are long suffering and long standing too, by the way. My father has always shown me the consistency of the work in our environment, and not only that, but being long suffering within the workplace. But he did it for over 3 decades. Why? To put food on the table. Why? To pay rent. Why? To be an example for his 2 sons. Yeah, as in you got to do what you got to do to see the next day. Yeah. And I'm proud to say this. My mum is the first person her side of the family to ever receive a higher level education. Ever. She's the hallmark. Yeah, my brother is the second. I'm the third. Now, who's to say if my mother didn't set that standard, would my brother have wanted to step to that standard? If my brother didn't step to that standard, my older brother, would I want to step to that standard? There's a thing called learning by your in an environment. If your environment is able to be beneficial and positive, then there's a likelihood that you want to be like that too. And on the inverse, if your environment is of negative and destructive nature, there's a likelihood you might be destructive, self-destructive. So I want to attribute the fact that my parents done what they had to do to get by, and they struggled, man. But guess what? They were so good at struggling, they made me seem like I weren't struggling. I only knew I was struggling later in life when I sat down and I spoke to my parents. And when I didn't have things that other people had, I had a mobile phone late compared to most of my generation growing up. I had a mobile phone late, but I didn't feel like I missed out.
Same.
Yeah. When it came to food was a little bit scarce sometimes. You can read into that however you want. But I didn't feel like I went without. They are survivalists, man.
Mm.
And that's my number one attribute to myself. If I was to say, what's my biggest strength? Survive. I don't know what that means, but the word survive, if you put in any circumstance, will work for you. And that's what my parents taught me, whether they know it or not. Now, my brother, I've only recently told him how much I look up to him. And I mean like 2 weeks ago, probably. I don't think I've ever told my brother that. Why? Because sibling rivalry. Why? Might be some masculinity there. I don't know, it might be being proud or whatever. Yeah? I'm more used to battling with my brother than complimenting my brother. And I recognize that. I just literally woke up and I thought, you know what? I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him how much of a role model he is to me. He is a absolute builder. To come from the same start that I come from, to be where he is now, is like someone robbed a genie bottle, man, and just wished. Yeah? But he grafted and he worked and he struggled and was long suffering throughout whatever he had to actually do to get to where he is now. And his journey isn't over. So they are the people who I initially looked at and who I was surrounded with growing up. And I grew up in a household where I saw my mother and my father in a long-term relationship. There was a little split, but they got back. So I had an expectancy of what a relationship looks like. But that's for another podcast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I had an expectancy in terms of what I believed and saw and should be within a successful relationship. So I can expand that to the people who I'm talking to right now, including some other people who are outside this podcast right now. But I have to say this, without my parents and my brother, without my boys that I'm surrounded with, I would no doubt be one step away from a prison or one step away from a graveyard, without a doubt. And that's the importance of having correct role models within your life. For me, of course. So yeah. So brilliant. So I have to kind of brush myself off, man. Like that was
Take a drink, boy. Take a drink.
No, but that's good though. You know.
Very good indeed. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, 100%.
I enjoyed that. Loved that.
Cool. Nice one. I would just like to open the floor now to an open discussion between ourselves over what we feel a role model should have and how we can become role models, and if you are already role models. Floor's open.
Yep. So, listening to everyone, it got me to thinking. And for me, I have a clear distinction between maybe a role model and someone that I may look to as that I thought was maybe like a mentor position, if you know what I'm saying. It
Okay,
wasn't
please clarify.
necessarily my role model, like I did, but I may have thought of him as someone who I could see as a mentor that I
Mhm.
can learn something from that wasn't my mother.
Okay,
So-
please clarify.
So basically, like for instance, like music, there were musicians and producers and artists that I wanted to learn from. I didn't necessarily see them as my role models because the age we grew up in, information was readily. So you knew their flaws, you knew the bad sides of them that maybe that wouldn't be what a role model should be. So I never
Okay.
really looked at them as my role model, but there was aspects of their lives, be it their creativity or whatever they were doing, that I was thinking, yeah, I could learn from that part.
Okay. Yes.
And I think I done that as a mechanism to not be disappointed.
Thank you
When
very
they,
much.
but when they did do things that that I did not agree with personally, or society themselves didn't agree with personally.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Interesting.
So I mean,
It's interesting.
for me that helped mold me in terms of my creativity, in terms of my vision of what I wanted to do. I saw the greatness in them, and I only focused on the great parts of them to help myself.
Right, now I can kind of bounce off on that too, you know, because like I'm gonna say it
Yeah.
out there, Michael Jordan was my role model. Michael Jordan was the one for me growing up. Yeah. The original MJ. And I'm saying that. The
No.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
You can't disrespect Michael Jackson like that. Don't go there.
Yes.
Don't go
The
there.
original MJ was
Don't go
Michael Jordan. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So he was my role model growing up. Why? Because I loved the game of basketball. That was my first sport I ever done. Thanks to my father. That was the first sport I ever done was basketball, and I haven't dropped the ball since. I'm terrible now, but I haven't dropped the ball since. I've still loved the game. Growing up, watching it completely, you know what I mean, on TV with my dad, my brother, and having posters of him and seeing the way he played the game. It's only when I got older. Now, this kind of vibrates back on a previous statement that was made by Jay, and I believe someone else said it as well, around he served his purpose when I was younger, and there was only an aspect of him that I liked. Once I grew a little bit more knowledgeable around who this character really was, his personality, what he does, I quickly removed him from being a role model from me as a person. He's still a role model for me as a basketball player. As a person, he is nowhere near. Yeah. To have such the level of influence that he has, yeah. To have such level of credibility in regards to being a successful black male, and then to say nothing when black issues rise. Now, I'm not saying you have to, but when you take a position in society, you have a responsibility for that position, whether you like it or not. That's just what comes with being successful. Now, this is why I don't feel sorry for celebrities who at one moment want to be in the public eye, and they want all the newspapers clicking the cameras in their face when it suits them. And then they think when they're ready, they can just turn off the cameras. Oh, don't bother me now. Now I want to live my private life. Once you enter that public eye, you're in the public eye. Yeah. And that is part of your job. That is part of your essence of being, because you're a public figure now. Yeah. Now, he has gone an extra mile. Not only has he not spoke in a positive manner for people who come from his own background, he's exacerbated it by making comments against people from his cultural background. Now that took me by shock more than anything else, really, if I'm honest. And that quickly removed him from being a role model. And I think that speaks to this, that a role model should be someone who you can who you can rely on, someone who you really know about them as a person in general, or as Jay said earlier, a mentor, which now I see Michael Jordan as when I was younger. He was my mentor for the game of basketball. And I learned growing up what a real role model was. And my real role model was in the same home that I was living in, not on a TV screen. So, yeah.
It's a good point, you make. I think we need to distinguish between the two of, mentor, well, between the three, being a mentor, an idol, and also a role model. And I think it's quite often that we confuse the latter, When I said, obviously, growing up, my role models changed. They changed because I didn't know who I was. So I hadn't found myself yet. So sometimes you find when you don't know who you are as a person, as an individual, you will have different people that you think they are the ones. Until now, you know yourself, you've become a man, you know yourself. Now, this is me. Now I can look and say, okay, these are the people I want to emulate. Because you know yourself. Do you get what I mean? So there's that aspect of it. And then the other side to it is I look at life as no one is perfect.
Yes.
Right? We all have our own flaws. So a role model to me is not perfect. I don't expect them to be perfect. Because
that's a key point that you made there.
We all have our flaws. The only difference is their imperfections. How much do they affect me?
Right.
That then depends whether I scratch them off that list to be they're no longer a role model because their imperfections are too great. It's just like with a partner. You're not perfect, they're not perfect. But the imperfections might be too greater for you to accept to be in a relationship with them. Or they counteract each other. So then you're fine together as a couple.
Yeah.
With your imperfections. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
That makes a lot of sense there, man. What about in terms of how we become role models? We've spoke about a lot about how others have been role models for us. We spoke a lot about the attributes that we would like to see in role models and how we can differentiate between role models, idols, and mentors. How does that now, I guess, hone in on ourselves? Because we are growing up as men and we are grown up as men. Yeah. Some of us have children. Some of us have people who look up to us. How do we make sure we don't become a disappointment as a role model and maintain positive and beneficiaries for those who see us as a role model? And keep in mind, we already previously said we might not know that we are role models for other people.
I think we've got to be true to yourself. That's the first thing. You've got to be true to yourself. That way, when someone sees you and they idolize you, they think you're their role model, they see you for who you are. So that when they grow up in life or 2 years down the line, they're not as shocked when something else comes out. That's one. Two, I think to be a good role model, so to speak, you have to keep evolving and keep getting better. You have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're not a finished article. You must continue working on yourself and growing. And when they see that, it also gives people then the aspiration to keep growing, to keep working on themselves. That's my take.
100%.
Definitely.
For me, when I used to live in Nottingham and going to study classes, an elder told me that I can recite to you from Genesis through to Revelations, word for the Bible. but I have not learned everything in between. To me, there's always room for improvement, just like T said. And I think that's paramount. You can't stay in a society where everything's changing around you and you expect the same results. You need to not move with the times, but be true to yourself, first and foremost, but always look for that evolution. What else can I do? What can I do tomorrow that I didn't do today? And to live on them kind of premises there. That's something that I've took from my role models, because they are evolving, they are ever changing. Like, the circumstances are not going to be the same last week as they were last year. So to me, it is about evolution. It is about staying true to yourself and your foundations, but also being willing to learn, because ignorance gets you nowhere.
100%, 100%.
Completely to add to that, I think for me personally being a role model, I struggle with that thought because I feel that it would restrict me in some way. Like it's like I've constantly got eyes on me.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Narcissistic in some aspect, but it feels like I've got eyes on me, so I'm not free to make mistakes. I'm not free to live my life and do what I want to. But I have been told, for instance, I used to do youth work, and I've been told using my music in conjunction with my youth work has inspired people and helped them in situations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I can recognize it, but still just the thought of, you might have to be a role model to somebody is a bit hard. And maybe it's different because I haven't got kids or anything. Maybe that something that might spark and change once that happens. But for me, in this moment in time, I struggle with the thought of myself being a role model for others, because like T said earlier, we're not perfect. We all have flaws, and I don't want my flaws, like T said earlier, to be the thing that gets me taken off that list, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of fear, I guess. Maybe it's a bit of fear, but yeah, that's how I see it.
On the back of what you just said, though, that fear, I think that fear within you of not wanting to either, I don't know, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, not wanting to let somebody down. Yeah.
Can you translate that, please?
Me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So that fear of not wanting to let somebody down, I can give you the example of me being a father and to my children. Now, there are some days, being a father, and I don't want to let my children down. But like I said, I'm not perfect, and my mistakes are there to be seen and there to be learned from. So that fear can be installed in many ways, but I think that fear keeps you on your toes.
It guides you.
Yeah. I think it lets you know that your heart's beating, Bedrin. Like that fear that you've got a consciousness of what your actions will lead to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't think you should ever lose that fear or that thought of someone be watching what I'm doing or kind of that might alter how they feel about me or whatever. Like, carry on living your life as you are, because to me, I think you're leading a beautiful path, my brother. Do you know what I mean? Whether that's fear-led or not. So that's what I like to say to you.
And to add on that as well, not everyone is going to idolize you. Not everyone is going to want you as a role model, because people are different. So one shoe is not going to fit all. You only have to worry about if there's one or two that will look up to you, then good. But let them see you as who you are. Because the more you're conscious then of someone is watching me, they can't see who you truly are. Because now, subconsciously, you're putting on a show because you know you're being watched. If you got what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas if you're just being yourself and say, look, some people are going to hate me, some people are going to love me, let's go with it. Let's run with that.
That's why I don't like the term role model, because to me, but I mean, it's a bit like a double-edged sword, because it's like we already established that some people might not know that they're role models.
Yep.
So the question of how can you be a role model, or are you a role model, is kind of like It's like forcing you into the uncomfortable position to realize. Do you get what I'm saying? To question.
Yeah, because it's subjective, isn't it?
You should have sneaky question that K put in there on purpose. I know you did.
Well, I will say this because people like to. So first, Jay wants to expose my thought, and now T wants to expose my thought for the first section. So I base these questions on the Johari window model. I don't know if you don't know what the Johari window model is.
No, please explain.
So Johari window, there's an aspect of knowing of self. Yeah. There's a knowing. See, this is if I'm going to remember it all now. There's a knowing of self that you know about yourself that no one else knows about you. Yeah. These are called close kept secrets. You know what you're doing 100% of the time, and you're prepared to expose some of that, but not all of that. And it's the not all of that that you know which is this section. Yeah. There's other things in terms of what people know about you that you don't know about yourself. Let that one sink in.
Yeah, that sound like growing up in the town, boy.
Yeah. There's aspects of things that you know about yourself and other people know about yourself. So that's the open part. Everyone knows Jay likes music, and Jay knows he likes music. Okay? That's called a safe zone. I'm safe with everyone knowing what I know, what I'm willing to let everyone know about me. And I'm safe for them to know that about me.
Yeah.
Now, here's the fourth aspect, which is what I call the danger zone, the abyss, the void. There's aspects about you, hear this, that you don't know about yourself and other people don't know about you. Hear that.
Other people don't know or know about you.
Hear that. I say it again. The fourth aspect is there are traits about you that you don't know about yourself and other people don't know about you.
Really, that's a very unusual one. How would you not know that trait about yourself?
That's like a secret door or a trap door.
Yeah, it's because it's a bit unusual, that one, because I'm sure you'd understand every aspect of yourself.
I don't know.
There's some aspects.
You won't really. There, like Tia said, I think there are some aspects of you that you won't know about yourself because you haven't. Okay, cool. Let's take this.
Explored
analogy,
them.
Yeah, you take this. Yeah, exactly. Take this analogy. Like you're going to a new school. In your old school, they had English, math, science, history, whatever. In your new school, they've just put in a Latin lesson. You've never. Do you know what I mean? So you're going into that lesson now. You don't know what's up and down.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, wow, Latin. I don't never. Do you know what I mean? That's a new exploration there.
Yeah. And you don't know how you're going to react to that.
You don't know how you're going to react. You don't know if someone's cussing you in another language or something like that. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that aspect builds into
very interesting.
What one step away from is, because if you don't know aspects about yourself that other people don't know, you are always one step away from something that is unknown. Yeah. Now, the reason why I say that is this. Have any one of you ever been burgled?
No. Someone's tried, but they get very far.
Not burgled. Like, yeah, in London, I got robbed before when I was younger.
Robbed and burgled, two different things, but I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. So burglary, someone breaks into your home while you're sleeping. Now, we all can say, man, if someone breaks into my home, this and that would happen, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
If it hasn't happened to you yet, you don't know how you're going to
react.
Mm.
Yeah.
So luckily, they burgled me when I wasn't in the yard, because if I wasn't in the yard, they would have known what happened.
Oi.
According to your known self.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
We are put in situations in life where we are not prepared.
Yeah. 100%.
Where we call it an oddball, right? When something hits you and you're not even prepared, we call it an oddball. And we don't even know how we're going to react, but yet we have to react and respond within that moment.
Boom.
Yeah. And I feel that feeds into what Jay said about the fear. We only fear things we are not in control of. Yeah. We are not in control of something that's unknown.
100.
And being a role model now and having the aspect of unknown self and having the aspect of fear of what that unknown self might be, or you might be in fear of what you already know about yourself. That's another aspect.
Yeah, that's massive. Yeah,
that one's huge.
That is massive.
Yeah. So, yeah. just food for thought.
That's
I
a
dis-
whole.
I have to
that's a-
disagree with you guys to an extent. Because I see where Jay's coming from in terms of like the unknown. But for me, and this is just me speaking, I feel like I know myself. But the only reason I know myself is because of the role models that I've had. Because everything that I am, realistically, is based on the role models that I've had. So I know me because I know my role models. So if I expand on that, so I agree, like not knowing that you are, because the two biggest role models growing up. So going back to what I said earlier about them not being necessarily being my role models now, is because they serve their purpose. Is my mum and my oldest brother. Now, my oldest brother would never know growing up that he was my role model. He probably would have thought that, well, he would have thought I was a pain in the ass, basically, because he had to look after me to an extent. Because let me paint the picture: 4 kids, boy, girl, 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 boy. I'm the youngest. 1 mum. So mum's a role model. So like everyone's alluded to in terms of the struggles, they don't make women like that anymore. That's what I'm saying right now. They don't make women like that can deal with the pressures. And we're not talking about, oh, this person unfollowed me or this person done this or whatever. Nah.
That modern concern. Concern.
I'm talking about how am I going to feed my 4 kids? I'm talking about that type of level. Mm-hmm. So I did like my mum was the role model until I got to an age where I had to actually, it's like when you become a parent, you have to become a role model to an extent. So when I say that my mum doesn't need to be, because she's done everything that she needed to for me to then continue that path. When it comes to my older brother, everything that I'm good at, like, and I'm just speaking off just drawn out, everything that I'm good at, anything that I'm passionate about, 90% of that comes from my brother. Like, just here's the one. So no, there's no man around. Like, here's the male figure in my life growing up, like predominantly. Other ones, but I'm talking about directly, my older brother. So you've got someone as a child, you've got someone that's taking you to school every day. They probably don't want to do that, but they're doing it every day because mother said, well, you're going that way, take your little brother to school. He's doing that every day. So he doesn't think he's being a role model, but I'm looking like, first of all, he's teaching me how to walk fast because he's in the mood that he's got to take me. So I've got to up my game and keep up.
I like that.
So I'm physically developing.
Fantastic.
Everything, like I say, everything that I'm good at. I love art. I love drawing. I love stuff like that. I watched my brother draw. Like, probably annoyingly, I was watching how he done things. When it comes to sport, athletics, he is passionate about athletics, and I thought, I see something that he enjoys. Well, I want to enjoy that because that's another male that's passionate about something. He used to cut my hair. Like, you guys know me, how often I used to go to the barbers back in the day. That come from somewhere. Like, so when I'm sitting there in the mirror and he's cutting my ear with the clippers, because once again, mum said, cut your brother's hair, whatever. Yeah. But he's also being so not also is he being my personal trainer, he's my stylist. Like, growing up, obviously he's 6 years older than me. Growing up, seeing the clothes that you wear, seeing how he kind of operates. Like, obviously, once he gets to a certain age, he'll start going out getting on the scene and whatnot. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing how he gets prepared for the. We used to share a little tiny bedroom, bunk beds. Like, I'm seeing him get ready every morning. I'm hearing the music that he plays. Like, I'm hearing how he sings. Like, probably never said this to him before, but like all these things that he's doing, he's actually paving the way of positive things that he's doing or things that he's enjoying, not doing anything negative that I'm seeing that's impacting me. Like, he's not even saying, right, you got to do that. It's just pure him doing his thing. But there's other people around him that he'll be of an influence because that's another male. Like, even like from a younger age, getting into your teenage years, he's the one. Like, I don't ever think that he'll go, right, now that you're of age, or now that you're 16, 17, 18, I'm going to start bringing you onto. Naturally, he brought me onto the scene. Like, if you know what I mean, like, he introduced people to
Yeah.
This is my little brother. Give him a kiss. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so obviously he's 6 years older, so he'll know certain people, whatever. He'll incorporate you. He'll bring you to certain barbecues, events, and stuff like that. Bring you onto the scene. Like, I've got many other siblings, but I'm just saying the direct one in terms of a male role model. This is what he's doing, and and he's not even probably thinking that he's doing that. He's just doing it. So role models don't have to be the ones that are saying, this is what you've got to do. You just do. And what I've learned from that is, well, I'm just going to do me. And because of what I've seen has been successful or positive, surely that should have an imprint onto the next generation, which is my children or my nieces and nephews. So I totally agree that unknown aspect of it. But as long as you're kind of got a good moral compass and you're just doing things the right way, then you can be that role model without even knowing it. And I think that's where I am. And with regards to my mum, she had, well, it goes back to what Kay said at the start, like that. There was no other, well, there probably was. There was other choices, but my mum made a choice to kind of just survive. So I think the survival was a word that was used earlier. She made a choice to survive, not only for her, but for her children. So those two people there have made me an automatic role model. And I know that, and I can say that because I've got three children that have come from me. And the only reason they've come from me and they've developed in a way is because of especially those two people. So, and all of that was done probably based on survival, really and truly.
Right.
So from what you just said, I've just picked up something, and I think it's just opened another dimension of role models. Your mum was a conscious role model. She knew she had to be a role model for you guys growing up, right? Had to survive. But your brother was an unconscious role model.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't thinking that he's showing you the way, but to you as a kid, you was being a sponge and you was absorbing everything that you was doing.
100%. As a teenager, you're just trying to kind of get on with your life. You're trying to find yourself. Now, if you're indirectly being instructed to kind of look after your younger brother, you're going to be annoyed because you're wanting to be do this, that, and whatnot. So, like I said, that unconsciousness of like he's doing it because he feels like he's being instructed to.
Yeah.
However, they don't understand, or he didn't understand the impact, actually, the positive impact that's had on actually someone that's young and naive, and that is just kind of absorbing things as they go along, good and bad. Because, like I said, I don't want to walk fast to school all the time, and get hot. Who wants to do that? Or have when someone like when you're an adult and you're walking fast and your kid has to skip a few to keep up, like that was me.
Yeah. But I think that's where Jay's fears are coming into, because now he has to come from an unconscious role model to a conscious one, where he has to now watch every move. Whereas your brother was unconscious.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is being a parent, because I'm not a parent, so is being a parent forcing you to go into that conscious realm of being a role model?
No, I think I personally feel that your response. So we talk. I think Kay mentioned about kind of so when you're dealt with a situation that you haven't dealt with before. So I say for you, obviously having a child that we know anyway. We never know. But in all seriousness, that's fine. We can do something with that. In all seriousness, like, based on the role models that you've had, I think you'll have a better chance of having a successful outcome based on your makeup, which is the role models that I've installed. And so it's not even something to think about. Like, as soon as I knew that I was having my first child, I felt ready. And you know why I felt ready? Because of the role models that I had around me. That I've seen.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, that's huge.
Okay.
So I understand that, but now let's go back to where we are in life right now. Can we afford to be unconscious role models, or do we need to be conscious role models going forward, knowing this is the reason why we're here, right? So we can talk about these issues and be role models. Can we afford to be unconscious role models where you've got siblings, you're a bit older, you've got siblings, you need to show them the way,
No,
not just carry on about your business.
I think we need to be. I think one of the reasons why we are our podcast. I think one of the reasons why people are listening is because we have made the choice to become conscious role models.
So we're conscious role models by default.
No, I think
By
I think we've chosen to be those
We've
conscious role
chosen
models.
to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
But we
I
also
just
want
want
other
to-
people to be also conscious role models. That's
As
the only
well.
way we're going to get our people together and promote this cohesion.
Thank you
and-
very much.
So basically, we're just trying to expand consciousness.
100%. There you go, Jay.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
From your point of view, in terms of you being a role model, what do you feel about that? Do you feel you are one? Keeping in mind that you might not be conscious that you are one.
Yeah, I'd like to. Ideally for me, I'd like to kind of live the life of a person who could be perceived as a role model. A conscious life, a life that is, obviously we, like you'd alluded to, we've all got flaws, but you try to live your life in the best possible way so that people around you that are aware of you kind of possibly can see you as a role model, because you're trying to do the right thing on a day-to-day basis.
And are you alluding to what Jay said? And are you in any sort of fear in terms of you knowing about what you know about yourself? Are you in any sort of fear of, I guess, breaking that label of being a role model?
Well, I mean, obviously, we all aspire to try and live up to being that role model, and I'm sure I do have those sort of unconscious fears that that you might make a mistake, and in making that mistake, you may not be that, or may not live up to being that role model. I think subconsciously we all are like that, and me myself is like that as well. I'm kind of trying to be the best that I can.
And the thing is, because I guess I've known you the longest out of this group that we're in now.
Yeah.
I can state from the boy, how many years has it been now?
10 years. 10 years.
About 10 years, man. Jeez. That's time go fast, boy.
Definitely done.
I can honestly say that you are one of my role models.
Oh, thank you very much.
Without a doubt. That's not even a thank you thing. It's because you've been you. It's because you've been you. You've been your unique self with your flaws and with your positive aspects. I like the fact that I can look up to someone that has a flaw because it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
Just like T said, no one's perfect.
Exactly.
And I think I would question more if I look at someone and their life looks perfect and nothing's going wrong. I actually question you more.
Oh, gee.
I'm more on guard.
100%.
I'm more on guard because
of course,
because that means you're able to hide your dirt so well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
I'll rather see the dirt. I'll rather see it.
Of course. Because it's out in the open. You've set your stall out, as they say, and people can see it.
Yeah. And you, for me anyway, I'm speaking about myself. You fall into the category of almost similar to what I see my parents as.
Yes.
And what I see my people and my culture as, in terms of being able to be long suffering.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, yes, you know what I mean? Not going into no details.
No, of course, because I understand that.
You know what I mean? You, as well as many of us here, have been through the blender.
Of course.
And it's the fact that we come out, yes, we're a little bit snagged and chipped here and that.
Of course we are.
But we still come out whole.
Cool, of course we do. And we're still...
But I think that's where the fears for me comes out, because we're so long suffering, we're one step away, one decision away from being that quote unquote role model. No matter all the good we've done in our past, something can happen today or tomorrow that can change the whole scope of that.
Yes.
And that's what makes me conscious.
Mud sticks, my friend.
Exactly.
Cool. Well,
but you know what? Can I?
Go ahead. Jump in, my man.
Just jump in quickly. Sorry. So for me,
got 2 seconds.
Our parents were long suffering. Our parents done the long suffering. I don't want our people to do the long suffering anymore. We've got to change the game. I'm sorry. Long suffering is normal. We are the generation to say we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, 100%.
We've got to change that.
Yeah, we have to change that narrative.
Long suffering is long, but
It is.
it's still something to be aware. It's still a good utility to have. I'm not saying long suffering, but understanding how to deal with that. Because anything at any given moment, look at where we've been for the last 100 odd days, like with the COVID-19 situation. People have had stuff. People have had to been. The whole world's been shaken upside down. But once again, it comes down to: are you able to think how to survive when things go?
What have you learned?
M, is that part of the black experience, though?
That's why I personally think it is. I personally feel
I believe it is.
It's not one we asked for, though. It's not one we asked for. is it?
No.
Absolutely not.
We definitely haven't asked for it, but I think that's what makes us unique.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree.
But we can have
100%.
the same tools without the long suffering. That's what we have to now find a balance between the long suffering and also having the same arsenal that our parents had to be able to deal with situations that arises from nowhere and handle and keep it together.
See, I'll take that and develop it more to say that, yes, our parents had the long suffering. Yes, we are a byproduct of that long suffering, so to speak. Yes, they did have the ammunition or the arsenal to deal with that long suffering. But I think us
I don't
now...
think they did.
Did
I
they
don't
have
think they
this? I don't think they had this.
True. Actually, you're right.
I agree with them.
I don't think they did. I think we now
We
have
do.
more tools.
Yeah, more tools. Yeah, very much so.
Sorry, I just
now.
wanted to quickly jump in and say, this is wrapping up the role models conversation. We've had a very integrated, very intense, emotional and heartfelt discussion of what role models are, what they mean to us, who they have been for us, and what we may be in terms of us being role models. We are spilling on into the long-suffering conversation, which will be for another podcast, of course. You have to stay tuned to actually know that one. So thank you very much, listeners. We are one step away from. I hope you have enjoyed and come back for the next one.